You've spent 30 years playing by the rules. You've worked the long hours, you've maximized your contributions, and you've watched the markets rise and fall with the steady hand of someone who knows that patience is the ultimate currency. You were told that if you did your part, the system would do its part. You were promised a safety net that would catch you, adjusted for the reality of the world around you. But as we stand here in the opening weeks of 2026, a cold reality is beginning to settle over the American landscape. It is a reality that isn't being headlined on the major news networks and isn't being discussed in the glossy brochures of the big banks. It is a silent mathematical erosion of everything you've built. They call it a cost of living adjustment. They tell you that a 2.8% increase in your Social Security benefits is a win for the American retiree. But if you look closer at the ledger, if you pull back the curtain on the numbers that Washington prefers to keep in the fine print, you realize that this isn't an increase at all. It is a calculated retreat. For the person between the ages of 40 and 60, the stakes have never been higher. You are in the critical window, the zone where every decision you make regarding your wealth protection and your tax exposure will determine whether your golden years are spent in abundance or in a constant state of defensive budgeting. Welcome to the 2026 Social Security trap. To understand why your raise is already gone before the check even clears, we have to look at the three-headed monster that is currently devouring the American dream of a stable retirement. The Medicare surge, the tax sunset of 2026, and the widening gap between official inflation and the actual cost of staying alive. Let's start with the math they want you to ignore. The Social Security Administration announced a 2.8% COLA for 2026. For the average recipient, that translates to roughly $56 extra per month. In a vacuum, $56 might cover a few bags of groceries or a tank of gas. But we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a system where one hand of the government gives, while the other hand is already reaching into your pocket. At the exact same moment that COLA was announced, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services released the new figures for Medicare Part B. The premium is jumping by nearly 10%, rising from $185 to approximately $203. That $18 increase might seem small in isolation, but when you subtract it from your $56 raise, you've already lost 32% of your adjustment to a single line item. This is the net zero effect. By the time you factor in the rising costs of Part D prescription drug plans and the increased deductibles across the board, the vast majority of Americans will find that their raise has been entirely cannibalized by the very system designed to protect their health. This is not a mistake. It is a structural necessity for a government grappling with unprecedented debt and an aging population. But for you, it is a warning. If you are 55 years old today, you are looking at this math and realizing that the traditional pillars of retirement are leaning. You see, the COLA calculation is based on the CPI-W, the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. This index tracks the spending habits of young workers, people who spend their money on technology, apparel, and transportation. It does not accurately reflect the spending habits of someone aged 40 to 60 or someone in retirement. It does not weigh healthcare costs, property taxes, or long-term care insurance with the gravity they deserve. While the official numbers say inflation is cooling, the retiree inflation rate, the cost of the things you actually need to survive and thrive, is accelerating. You are being measured by a yardstick that was never meant for you. But the Medicare trap is only the first layer of the 2026 crisis. As we move deeper into this year, we are approaching the edge of a fiscal cliff that has been looming since 2017. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is reaching its sunset. For years, we have enjoyed historically low marginal tax rates and a doubled standard deduction. We became comfortable with the 22% and 24% tax brackets, forgetting that they were always temporary. As of late 2025 and moving into 2026, the clock has run out. Unless Congress acts, a prospect that seems increasingly unlikely given the current political paralysis, the tax code is reverting to its pre-2018 levels. This means that the 22% bracket jumps to 25%, The 24% bracket jumps to 28%. The standard deduction, which has shielded so much of your income from the IRS, is set to be cut nearly in half when adjusted for inflation. For a couple in their 50s earning a combined six-figure income and trying to maximize their final years of savings, this is a massive automatic tax hike that no one is talking about on the evening news. It is a silent seizure of your purchasing power. Think about what this means for your retirement accounts. If you have been dutifully putting money into a traditional 401k or IRA, you have been making a deal with the government. You took a tax break today in exchange for paying taxes tomorrow. But tomorrow has arrived and the tax rates are going up. You are effectively being penalized for your success. The money you thought was yours is being taxed at a higher rate than you ever anticipated. This is why the concept of tax diversification is no longer a luxury. It is a necessity for survival. If you are not looking at Roth conversions, if you are not exploring the super catch-up provisions for those aged 60 to 63, which allow for an additional $11,250 in contributions, you are leaving your flank exposed. The government is counting on your inertia. They are counting on you to stay in the traditional vehicles so that when the tax sunset hits, they can collect their premium on your decades of hard work. And then there is the phantom of the IRMA, the income-related monthly adjustment amount. This is the most dangerous trap for the high earner or the successful saver. Most people believe that Medicare costs are the same for everyone. They aren't. If your income exceeds certain thresholds that are often triggered by something as simple as selling a property or taking a necessary distribution from your IRA, the government hits you with a surcharge. In 2026, these surcharges are set to become more aggressive. You could find yourself paying hundreds of dollars more per month for the exact same coverage as your neighbor simply because you were successful in building your nest egg. It is a success tax, plain and simple, and it is triggered by two-year-old tax returns. The decisions you make today in 2026 will determine your Medicare costs in 2028. The lag is the trap. Most people don't see it coming until the bill arrives in the mail, and by then it's too late to restructure your income. We have to ask ourselves, why is this happening now? Why is 2026 the year where all these lines are converging? The answer lies in the macroeconomic reality of a nation with $34 trillion in debt. The interest payments on that debt now exceed the defense budget. The government cannot afford to be generous. They need every dollar of revenue they can find, and the easiest place to find it is in the frozen wealth of the American middle and upper middle class, the people who have worked, saved, and followed the rules. You are the target because you are the only ones left with the capital to fill the gap. They won't call it a tax increase. They'll call it a return to normalcy. They won't call it a benefit cut. They'll call it a premium adjustment. But the result is the same, a steady, relentless erosion of your autonomy. For the person in their late 40s or 50s, the sandwich generation struggle is intensifying. You are likely caring for aging parents who are currently falling into these Social Security traps, while simultaneously trying to fund the education or the early adult lives of your children, all while staring down your own retirement horizon. You are the pillar holding up two generations, and the ground beneath you is shifting. You cannot afford to rely on the 4% rule anymore. That rule was written for a world that no longer exists, a world of 2% inflation and stable tax codes. In 2026, a 4% withdrawal rate combined with a 3% tax increase and 5% real-world inflation means your portfolio is being depleted at twice the speed you projected. This is where the macro-sentinel approach differs from the mainstream. We don't look at the market as a place to get rich. We look at the macro environment as a battlefield where the goal is to keep what is yours. Protection is the new growth. If you can shield 10% of your income from an unnecessary tax hike, that is the equivalent of a 15% gain in the stock market without any of the risk. If you can navigate the Medicare cliffs and avoid an IRMA surcharge, you have given yourself a guaranteed return on investment that no mutual fund can match. But this requires a shift in mindset. It requires you to stop being a passive observer of your financial life and start being a strategist. It means looking at the sunset of the tax laws not as a tragedy, but as a deadline. You have a window, a very narrow window, to move assets, to rebalance your tax exposure, and to lock in protections before the gate closes. The media will spend the rest of this year talking about the latest political drama or the daily fluctuations of the S&P 500. They will distract you with noise while the signal is clear. The social contract is being renegotiated without your input. The 2.8% COLA is the bait. The 9.7% Medicare hike and the 2026 tax sunset are the hook. Most people will bite. They will see the extra $50 in their check and feel a brief moment of relief, not realizing that their total cost of living has moved up by $500. They will enter 2027 surprised by their tax bill, wondering why their same income resulted in a lower standard of living. But you don't have to be one of them. You are watching this because you know that the math doesn't add up. You are watching because you value data over dogma and preparation over hope. As we move through the coming months, we will go deeper into the specifics. We will look at the exact math of the Roth conversion ladder and how to execute it before the brackets reset. We will look at the super catch-up rules and how to maximize your 401k and 403b contributions to lower your taxable income at the exact moment the government is trying to raise it. We will look at the healthcare strategies that go beyond Medicare, exploring how health savings accounts can be used as a stealth IRA to pay for those rising premiums with tax-free dollars. We will look at the reality of the American economy from the perspective of someone who has skin in the game, someone like you. The era of easy retirement is over. The era of the strategic retiree has begun. The system is changing. The rules are being rewritten, and the macro sentinel is here to ensure that you aren't the one paying the price for the system's failures. You have worked too hard and waited too long to let a few lines of tax code and a Medicare premium hike steal your peace of mind. The information is available, the tools are at your disposal, and the time to act is now. We are entering a period of great volatility, but volatility creates opportunity for the prepared. Don't let the 2026 Social Security trap be the end of your story. Let it be the moment you took control. Let it be the year you decided that your wealth, your health, and your future belong to you, not to a government ledger. Stay analytical, stay preventive, and above all, stay vigilant. This is Macro Sentinel, and we are just getting started. Look at the history of the Social Security program, and you will see a pattern of incremental shifts that, over decades, have fundamentally changed the nature of the benefit. When the program was first conceived, it was never meant to be the sole source of income for the American retiree. It was a floor, a foundation. But as the decades passed and the traditional pension disappeared, replaced by the self-managed 401k, the pressure on Social Security intensified. Now in 2026, the program is facing a solvency crisis that is no longer a distant threat. It is a mathematical certainty. The trustees have been warning us for years that by the mid-2030s, the trust fund will be exhausted, leading to an automatic 20% to 25% cut in benefits across the board. The 2026 COLA trap is a symptom of this larger disease. The government cannot afford to give a true cost of living adjustment because the money simply isn't there. So they give with one hand and take with the other, using administrative adjustments to manage the deficit without having to pass an unpopular law in Congress. It is a management of decline. For the 40-year-old, this means you cannot count on Social Security being the same program for you as it was for your grandparents. You must build your own floor. You must treat any benefit you receive as a bonus, not a baseline. For the 60-year-old, it means you must optimize what you have now, protecting every dollar from the administrative friction of rising premiums and taxes. The gap between the haves and the have-nots in the next decade will not be defined by who earned the most, but by who kept the most. It will be defined by who understood the tax sunset of 2026 and who was blindsided by it. We are living through a period of financial repression, a term economists use to describe a situation where inflation is kept higher than interest rates and tax codes are manipulated to effectively transfer wealth from the private sector to the public sector to pay down national debt. This is the macro environment you are navigating. It is not a conspiracy, it is a policy. And the only way to counter a policy is with a strategy. You must become your own chief financial officer. You must look at your household as a business that is currently facing a 10% increase in its primary healthcare tax and a 15% increase in its income tax starting in 2026. If a business faced those numbers, it would restructure immediately. It would look for efficiencies, it would move assets, and it would change its long-term projections. You must do the same. The beauty of being in the 40 to 60 age bracket is that you still have the most powerful tool in finance on your side: agency. You have the ability to change your trajectory. You have the intellectual capital to understand these concepts and the financial capital to implement the solutions. But you must act before the sunset. Once the calendar turns and the new tax rates are locked in, your options become much more limited. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 was a gift of time. It gave us nearly a decade of lower rates to prepare for the inevitable return to the mean. 2026 is the year the gift expires. As you sit down to review your finances this month, don't just look at the bottom line of your bank statement. Look at the velocity of your money. How much of it is leaking out to Medicare Part B? How much will leak out to the IRS in 2027 when the new rates hit? How much is being lost to the real inflation of the items in your grocery cart? When you see the leaks, you can plug them. But you have to be willing to look. You have to be willing to ignore the noise of the everything is fine crowd and look at the cold, hard math of 2026. This channel was created to be your eyes and ears in this new economic landscape. We are not here to give you generic advice. We are here to give you the data that the mainstream ignores. We are here to talk about the super catch-up, the Irma cliffs, the tax sunsets, and the cola traps. We are here to help you protect the life you've spent 40 years building, because at the end of the day, no one is going to care more about your money than you do. No one is going to fight harder for your retirement than you will. The Sentinel isn't just a name, it's a mission. It's about standing watch over your wealth in an era of unprecedented fiscal complexity. The 2026 Social Security trap is real. The Medicare surge is happening. The tax sunset is coming. But you are not helpless. You are informed, you are prepared, and you are not alone. We will navigate this together, one data point at a time, one strategy at a time, because the goal isn't just to survive 2026, it's to thrive in the years that follow. It's to ensure that when you finally do step away from the grind, you do so on your terms, with your assets protected and your future secure. The system may be rigged, but the informed player can still win the game. Stay tuned, stay focused, and let's get to work. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. Let's make sure they are the right ones. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to dive into the granular details of the super catch-up provision. This is a game changer for anyone between 60 and 63. We're going to show you exactly how this one rule can shield over $11,000 from the 2026 tax hike. We're also going to break down the Medicare Part D donut hole changes that are coming this year. Changes that could either save you thousands or cost you a fortune depending on how you structure your drug plan. And finally, we will look at the specific states that are decoupling their tax laws from the federal sunset, creating tax havens right here in the U.S. for those willing to move their primary residence. Information is the only shield against the coming fiscal storm. The 2026 Social Security trap is only the beginning. The deeper we go, the more you will realize that the quiet changes are often the most consequential. The "what the media doesn't tell you" isn't just a slogan. It's a survival guide for the American middle class. You've done the work. You've saved the money. Now let's make sure you get to keep it. This is the reality of 2026. This is the mission of Macro Sentinel. Let's look at the numbers. Continued deep dive into the 401k limits. The specific dollar-for-dollar breakdown of the tax bracket shifts from 10% to 10%, 12% to 15%, 22% to 25%, 24% to 28%, 32% to 33%, 35% remains 35%, and 37% returns to 39.6%. Discussion of the qualified business income (QBI) deduction sunsetting, which affects small business owners and freelancers in the target demographic. Discussion of the estate tax exemption being cut in half, impacting the transfer of wealth to the next generation, all delivered in a continuous, authoritative, serious narrative flow. The 2.8% COLA increase is essentially a psychological anchor. It's a number designed to make people feel like they are keeping up, even as they fall behind. If you have $1,000 in your pocket and I give you $28, you feel richer. But if at the same time the cost of your medicine goes up by $20, your groceries go up by $15, and your tax bill goes up by $10, you are actually $12 poorer than when you started. That is the 2026 trap in its simplest form. It is the illusion of growth masking the reality of contraction. To break out of this cycle, you have to stop thinking in nominal dollars and start thinking in purchasing power. Purchasing power is the only thing that matters in retirement. If your income goes up, but your ability to buy a gallon of milk, a gallon of gas, or an hour of a doctor's time goes down, you are losing. In 2026, the divergence between nominal income and real purchasing power is reaching a breaking point. For the first time in a generation, the standard retirement plan, Social Security plus a 4% withdrawal from a 60-40 portfolio, is failing to maintain purchasing power. This is why we focus so heavily on non-correlated assets and tax-advantaged vehicles. Every dollar you keep from the IRS is a dollar that maintains its purchasing power. Every dollar you save by avoiding the IRMA surcharge is a dollar that stays in your economy instead of the government's. We are moving into a micro-efficiency era of personal finance. The big gains in the stock market are great, but they are often eaten by the hidden taxes of the modern era. The strategic retiree knows that a 2% reduction in their effective tax rate is just as valuable as a 2% increase in their portfolio's yield, and it comes with zero market risk. As we look toward the second half of 2026, the political rhetoric will heat up. There will be promises of new tax cuts, promises of protecting Social Security, and promises of lowering healthcare costs. You must ignore the promises and look at the math. The math is nonpartisan. The math doesn't care who is in the White House. The math says that $34 trillion in debt requires higher revenue and lower real-world benefits. Whether they do it through a direct tax hike or through the silent mechanisms we've discussed today, the result is the same. Your goal for 2026 is to become mathematically invisible to the system's worst impulses. Use the Roth conversions, use the catch-up contributions, use the HSAs. Diversify your tax buckets so that you have the flexibility to pull income from whichever source is the most advantageous in any given year. If tax rates are high, pull from the Roth. If tax rates are low, pull from the traditional IRA. Flexibility is the ultimate defense against a changing system. The 2026 Social Security trap is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that the set-it-and-forget-it mentality of the 1990s and 2000s is dead. The modern environment requires constant vigilance and a willingness to adapt to new data. You are part of a generation that has seen the world change more rapidly than any before it. You have navigated the dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, the 2020 pandemic, and the 2022 inflation surge. You are a survivor. But surviving isn't the same as thriving. Thriving requires a plan. It requires a sentinel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your own financial education. The numbers we've discussed today are the foundation upon which we will build your 2026 strategy. In our next session, we're going to get even more specific, looking at the Social Security timing myths that are costing retirees tens of thousands of dollars in lost benefits. We're going to look at why waiting until 70 might actually be a mistake in the high inflation, high tax environment of 2026. We will look at the real-world impact of the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, the hidden rules that surprise so many public service workers. You've worked for your money. Now, It's time to make your money work for you, and more importantly, to make sure it stays with you. This is Macro Sentinel, protection, analysis, and the data-driven path to a secure future. Stay tuned, because the 2026 landscape is changing fast, and we are going to be there every step of the way to make sure you're ready. The trap is set, but you have the map. Let's move forward. Would you like me to start on the visual prompts for the AI or the detailed Roth conversion guide for the next video?